So it seems America has a bit of a trend in having top-tier fighters which, while strong on paper, end up getting significantly outclassed, mostly just due to their lack of good sensors and the strength of their opponent's weapons. That definitely holds true for the F-15E, which we just covered a little while ago, but today I want to look at an aircraft which suffers from this problem to a much more serious degree, the F-14B, aka the Bombcat. I'll just be straight up with you guys, this thing is in an absolutely horrific position at its current battle rating. Honestly, I think I enjoyed playing the two Italian F-104s, which I just covered, more than this thing, and that's really saying something, and the simple reason for that is due to its weapons. The AIM-7Ms and the AIM-9Ls are just simply not effective weapons at 13.0. 9Ls can be flared by pretty much anyone paying attention with one pop, and the 7Ms simply don't have the acceleration to be an effective quick reaction weapon, especially when you consider the radar is pulse Doppler head-on only, and your ACM mode only has a range of 9 kilometers. And then there are the Phoenixes. So the Bombcat gets access to an improved version of the AIM-54, the AIM-54C, which in real life gets a smokeless motor, a more powerful booster, and better avionics. Unfortunately, Gaijin has seen fit to simply just only add that last bit, so all you're left with is a heavier Phoenix with a smaller warhead, and the only benefit being a little bit less inertial navigation drift, which is rarely, if ever, going to make any sort of difference, at least in my experience. It still blows my mind how comfortable Gaijin is leaving their game in just a blatantly broken state, especially when in this case it could be fixed literally by just changing a few values in the game files and hitting save, but that seems to be what we should expect from them at this point. Long story short, just use the A version if you're going to play this thing. The good thing about the Phoenixes, though, is that even though these things have been far surpassed by modern Fox 3s like the AMRAAM, they still remain second only to the Fokker 90 in terms of extreme long-range BVR performance. The problem is, in order to make use of that range, there are a few conditions that need to be met in order for you to actually utilize these missiles to their full potential. First off, these missiles need a long time to accelerate. Overall, the Phoenixes actually have considerably more raw acceleration than the AMRAAM, but with a burn time of 30 seconds, you need to give it a lot of room in order to actually let it build up energy. The other problem is the Bombcat's radar. Like the F-15E, it's not terrible, but it seems to have a very difficult time maintaining TWS locks for some reason, which can sometimes cause the Phoenixes to be guided towards random ghost targets, even when their initial launch lock was solid. For this reason, you need to be extremely particular about when and at who you fire, which I'll talk about a little later when we discuss strategy. Before I get to that, though, I want to just quickly talk a little bit about the F-14's airframe. The airframe is probably the only part of this aircraft which is really worthy of being at 13.0. Its energy retention and acceleration are pretty good, and its low-speed turning circle is extremely tight. There are certainly still plenty of aircraft that can beat it, but it at least holds up. I'll show you a few dogfights at the end of the video. Anyways, in terms of how we approach playing this aircraft, I think you can probably guess that basically the only competitive attribute we bring to the table in AirRB in this aircraft is those Phoenixes. I know that spamming these from across the map is the absolute peak of brain-dead cancer gameplay, but I promise we're going to be a little bit more strategic than that. My preferred loadout is 4 Phoenixes, 2 7Ms, and 2 9Ls. Because of the constraints of our radar, and just due to how AirRB matches typically develop, the start of the match is going to be pretty much our only opportunity to use these Phoenixes to their full effect. What a lot of people seem to get wrong about firing the Phoenixes is that they overestimate how important it is to fire them from altitude, and as a result decide to zoom climb as high as they can and don't consider the importance of speed and positioning. I have experimented extensively with different launch parameters, and I can say very confidently that the following is going to be your best bet in terms of Phoenix launches. Right from the start of the match, climb at 10 degrees right towards the enemy, and once you hit around 5,000 meters, level out and pick up speed. The reason for doing this is because, for one, this will keep you below contrail height and make you more difficult to spot, while also getting you quite fast, often up to around Mach 1.4, which is going to give your Phoenixes a huge head start in terms of acceleration. To decide who to fire at, check 2 things. If you're in an up tier or you have an Iranian Tomcat on your team, don't bother firing at high altitude targets, because if either of those things are true, these targets will likely already have been fired upon, and you accomplish very little by expending your Phoenixes on them. If neither of these things are true, though, and especially if you're the only Tomcat on your team, definitely fire on the enemy space climbers, because even if you aren't able to secure a kill, launching on these targets will keep them busy, at least temporarily, and distract them from attacking your low-flying teammates. 45 to 50 kilometers is usually the best launching distance for these types of targets. Most of the time, though, you're going to want to fire on low-flying enemies hugging the deck. Due to the enormous warheads on the Phoenix, even experienced players can sometimes get caught in the blast when they impact the ground, which makes them ideal for this task. For these types of targets, between 40 and 45 kilometers usually works best in my experience. Like I mentioned earlier though, your radar is still quite limited, so to give yourself the best chance of landing multiple hits, aim for targets which are loosely clustered together in the same area rather than just firing them at targets all over the place. Also, it seems to be that usually the best targets to fire on are those heading directly from the enemy spawn towards your bases, rather than those swinging out wide to the right or those heading directly towards you. I assume this is because you're more likely to hit people who are just doing brain-dead base bombing while half asleep. Once you launch your missiles, start turning left and right occasionally while maintaining a TWS lock on your targets. This will bleed out incoming missiles of energy and give you a bit more time to guide your shots onto target. Once either enemy missiles start getting close to you or most of your missiles have locked onto their targets with their onboard radars, turn left, slightly back towards your base. This change of direction will heavily deplete incoming missiles of energy. It will also put you in a much better position to start notching if necessary. At this point, you'll want to start scanning for targets of opportunity. Sometimes enemies at high altitudes will have wandered very nearby you, and if this happens, you can engage them with your sparrows. If that isn't the case though, you can head towards the deck and transition to the next part of this strategy. Before I get to that though, I just want to make very clear that even if you do everything right with launching the Phoenixes, this is not a guarantee of kills. Most players these days have a much stronger understanding of Fox 3s and how to counter them than they did a few years ago, so the chances of you actually killing someone like this tends to be around 40% in my experience. Still, considering the many other drawbacks of this aircraft, firing these Phoenixes off at the beginning of the match to hopefully skew the numbers a little bit in your team's favor remain the most effective way to meaningfully contribute to your team, so I would still recommend doing it. Once your Phoenixes are expended, you can transition into a low-altitude ambush predator. What I like to do is just switch my radar off so as not to give my position away, and then fly around at very high speed at very low altitude clockwise around the map, attempting to sneak up on people and blindside them before they can react. Basically, keep an eye out for stragglers or other targets you can third party. Given your IR missiles lack IRCCM and your Sparrows lack a proper pulse Doppler guidance mode, it's extremely important that you keep the element of surprise on your side. If you don't, or you fire too early, enemies will be able to very easily counter all of your launches. Also, remember that the Tomcat's engines run extremely hot, so even with all of its countermeasures, if someone gets the drop on you, spoofing their IR launches will be much more difficult for this aircraft than most. Now I'd like to show you a few specific engagements, which I think will help you better understand this phase of the match. Starting off with this F-20, you might have noticed how I immediately went into the vertical and have been trying to get both of us slow. The F-14 turns a lot tighter at these lower speeds, but also accelerates very well. So against many opponents, it pays to try to get onto their 6 as soon as possible, even if it costs you a ton of energy to do so. To be honest with you though, that last match was a rare example of the F-14 getting into a furball while being the most dangerous aircraft in the mix. This next engagement should give you a more realistic picture of what this will usually be like. We enter this engagement radar off from behind an island, where we will just barely overcome my terrible aim to gun down this unsuspecting F-16. But my happiness is short-lived because I then see behind us there's an F-2, which after the Rafale flight model nerf now sits as the second best dogfighting airframe in the entire game. We also have a Hornet, which is another terrible matchup for this aircraft due to its excellent low-speed handling. I am not under any sort of impression that I can win this fight, but I'm still going to force this guy to fight tooth and nail for every inch of positioning he gets on me. I'm going to start off by ducking behind cover to protect myself from those AAM-3s, and then hope to God he accidentally overshoots. This almost actually works, but I'm still not quite as maneuverable as him, and he's soon able to go straight up UFO mode on us. Still, I'm going to try and drag this out as long as I can in the hopes that he makes a mistake. And the pressure is even greater since apparently a fan is watching and I don't want him to realize how bad I actually suck. But my teammate here comes in clutch and somehow manages to 9L both of them. Well done, Mr. Jaren. I wish I could tell you that this match had some sort of epic final battle, but in fact it ends with yet another successful but uneventful ambush where I turn this flanker into flaming confetti with my last 9L. Remember to check your flanks, kids. This last clip I'm mostly just going to include because I thought it was funny, but it's a good example of how sticky a Tomcat can be once it's on your 6. We have here 2 more flankers who I guess decided that I'm not a threat worthy of their attention, and so we're going to politely inform them that their assumptions were incorrect. I may or may not have been a bit beveraged at the time this was filmed, so please forgive my terrible aim, but this first guy apparently decided that it's against the rules not to let him win, so rest in peace my account, I guess. His wingman then decided to pop a couple of R-73s at me, and surely nobody could dodge two R-73s, so he simply turns around, bends over, and presents for me, allowing me to spray 20mm all over his back. Moral of the story, I'm not really sure, just don't do it again, I guess. Overall, would I advise you to play the Bombcat? No, absolutely not, but if you're dead set on learning how to play it, well, here you go. If this thing actually got its improved Phoenixes, AIM-9Ms, and maybe AIM-7Ps, I think it could hold up alright, but the idea that this thing in its current form is the equal of the Su-33 at the same battle rating is an absolute joke. Just a bit of channel news before we wrap up. The long-awaited merch store is finally open. I have a few of my designs up currently, but expect plenty more of those and other possum-related memorabilia there in the future. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out the playlist in the description for more similar content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.